Welcome to the Excel Pod.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Thinking Kingdom podcast. We got a good episode, a great episode. Dare I say, maybe even the best episode that we have. No, maybe? We'll see. We got Brother Neal Pollard on. He's going to be talking about strategic planning within the church and how important that is to purpose what we do in the church. Probably talk about some goal setting and everything that strategic planning involves to move the Lord's church further. Help her reach her true capacity, and he's an expert at it. And we sat down and had coffee, he and I, and our brother John Kallenbach, and we discussed that and how important that is for the church. But before we get into that conversation, Nate, welcome. How are you?
Not great.
Yeah, we're struggling over here. All of us. Neal just got done with the run, and allergies are on the all-time high in Missouri and Oklahoma. It feels like so.
Yep.
This is springtime, baby. Yeah, we got our box of tissues. For those listening, we're ready to go. We're ready, or maybe not so much, but we have our brother Neal Pollard on. Neal, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Great. It's good to be with you guys.
Yeah, we're happy.
Love what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. We enjoy it. You know, right now we're going through Ephesians. We're having some great conversations, just Nate and I in Ephesians, and just reflecting back on this podcast, it's just been a blessing. I know this conversation with you is going to be no different. It's just this is such an important episode. I think that elders everywhere need to listen to, ministers and helping their eldership kind of purpose what they do in the church, just to, get some, see how measurable data to see how we're progressing within the churches. So, and Neal, let's go ahead and open it up for your bio for those of our audience who may not know you, whatever you want, and then we'll get into our versal, and then we'll get into the content of the episode. Okay.
Okay. Maybe the place for me to begin is that I come from a family of preachers. I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up in the mission fields of South Georgia. My dad established congregations and worked with small congregations, and always helped them to grow. He was in a group of preachers that went to Freed-Hardeman College. He was actually a classmate of Wayne Berger's, Jerry Barber's, Rubel Shelley, John Stacy, a lot of guys that went on to be high achievers, and Dad's certainly one of those. And so I learned a lot from my dad, but I went off to Faulkner University, and Wendell Winkler was the head of the Bible department there, and been preaching since 1992 in Alabama, Virginia, Colorado, and Kentucky. Wouldn't be where I was without my wife, Kathy. Mm-hmm. We have three great sons. They're all grown and married. They have between them, of course, Carl's doing all the heavy lifting, but they've got 5 kids. And Carl and Emily are expecting another, and we got another one. Dell and Janelle are expecting their second, so we'll have 7 by the end of the year, Lord willing. We've been here at Cumberland Trace for 7 years, but I know you guys from the 13 years that I spent at Bear Valley in Colorado. So I think I could say more, but I think that'll get us started.
No, let's talk about just really briefly any of your books or your works, or how we can reach you and some of your content that you have out there.
Kathy and I both previously had a book published, I with Publishing Designs and she with Gospel Advocate. Mine is Rise Up and Build, and hers is
It's okay.
When Loved Ones Fall Away.
There
I'm trying
is.
to think. Anyway, it's that's been well received. It's gone into 3 printings, and mine's been reprinted. A couple of years ago, we started Life in Favor Publishing, and I did an adaptation of the material that I would have. I know, Nate, I taught you preaching this work. I'm trying to remember, Austin, if I left. I think I moved before you had it.
Yeah.
But that book is called In His Line of Work, and it's from the kind of the the headings of each of the parts of the class. And then just a couple of months ago, released Keeping the Church from the Wilderness, which is an analogy from the wilderness wandering to what we're facing in the culture of the church today. I've got a couple other book projects in the offing that I'm working on, and Kathy's also working on a second book that's an adaptation of something she's done for many years in Ladies' Days on Will Your Anchor Hold, dealing with storms of life. So she does a little neat tiny spark at Snail Mail Club. She's just started. She's got a YouTube channel on Bible marking. Inspired somewhat by both Wendell Winkler and something that used to be done more topically, and then Denny's exegesis. So she does textual Bible marking, just some kind of expository. So anyway, we've got that going on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Enjoy that.
No, that's great. And if I had any foresight whatsoever, when we had Carl on, I should have just had Kathy, because they're kind of a package deal. And I just, for some reason, I only see Carla's Bible marking because she posts it on Facebook. So it was just a constant. I was like, I need to have Carl on, but you're gonna have to tell Kathy sorry, because I should have had her on too. They're kind of a package deal, and I just neglected.
Kathy already told me she doesn't want to anymore. She's very upset.
Very upset that Austin didn't reach out.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible of me.
She blocked you, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Probably rightfully so. We'll have Kathy on and let her do some of her Bible marking and her stuff. Go ahead, Neal.
Return to Me is the name of her book.
Okay. Return.
I gave you the subtitle yet.
It's okay.
But that's right. They do this podcast together as well. So that's something I forgot.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big influence with some of the ladies that I know. We know Maria Kallenbach very well, and John. You said, John. Maria's his wife, and what a great couple. And but sure. Yeah, a lot of women eat up their podcast. It's great. So, ladies, if you're looking for a resource, I'm going to put everything in the description as far as how to access some of Neal's material and Kathy's material, so you all can have easy access to it. But before we dive into strategic planning, let's play as we do, as is our custom. Neal, what we do is we play Versal. Have you ever seen Versal or heard of it? Or
I don't know how I missed that in watching.
The episodes you may have been watching was just a continuance. We may have never played it over at the beginning. It was at the very first episode. But have you played Wordle or familiar with Wordle, where you try to, on New York Times, you try to guess what the word is? It's a 5-letter word, and no?
Yeah, I've done something like that.
Okay, well, I'm going to share on the screen. We'll explain how it goes. It's something fun that we do, but it's basically Wordle with Bible verses. This is the reference, and I didn't choose this. This is something that automatically generates.
Whatever. You chose this.
I did not. It automatically generates. So basically, we just try to guess where it's at in the Bible, and if it's correct, if the Bible book's correct, or the chapter or verse in the ones or tens place is correct, it will signal green, meaning it's in the right place, or you chose the right book. If it's yellow, which the Bible book won't ever be yellow, but if it's the ones or the tens of either the chapter or verse, it'll signal yellow if the number's in the reference, but not in the right spot. Just not in the right place. That's correct, Nate. So maybe you'll just get this off the rip and we won't have to guess too much. So we usually kick it to our guests. So Neal, the reference is, "Look, I am creating new heavens and a new earth, and no one will even think about the old ones anymore." And this is the NIV, so you may be more familiar with a different rendering of this verse, maybe NASB.
Well, I know that Peter quotes this, but this is Isaiah's reference. But I'm trying to think if this is Isaiah 65:16.
All right, let's at least do that one, because isn't it in two places in Isaiah?
Yeah, 66.
Where's Isaiah at?
24? There you go.
65. You said 16?
Yeah, and I know that's not right.
Okay, we got. Hey, getting 4 of the 5 in the green's really, really good off the rip. So, the hint says this verse comes later in the Bible than your last guess. So, obviously, it's going to be 17, 18, or 19. One of those two. You want to take a guess, or you want to split the difference and do 18, or?
Let's go. Yeah, let's go 65-17.
Okay. There we go. Verse 2, very impressive, Mr. Neal. We like playing that. It's just a fun little game. And there's something that's
where do you find this? Because
it's an app.
I do. Okay.
Yeah,
I see it.
We play this. We haven't really been playing it lately we have a ministers group. I've told you about it, Neal, and we send our results to each other, and somebody gets it like in 1 or 2 or 3, and I'm just thinking, oh, come on. I mean, if Matthew Hite can get it, and then I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a clue where this verse is. And vice versa. It's just a lot of fun, and
it looks like it.
It is. It's fun. You get on streaks, and it's just it's versatile. It's a web app, and it's also an app on your phone, and they got other games. Like right now, you can arrange the seals, the 7 seals, in chronological order, so you have to kind of pick and whatnot, and some events in Joshua, and they're really developing the app, and it's just a lot of fun. Help you get in your Bible and motivate you to know more. So
it's the first thing I'm going to do when we're done.
there you go. Upload verse and send me what you got each day, and I'll be like, nah, I don't. I have no idea where this one is. There was one reference in Jonah, and I don't know how I missed it, but I just was beside myself trying to find. I couldn't even get the right book. It's just.
Was it the prayer? The prayer could sound very ambiguous.
No, I don't know what it was. Nate, you probably can't even remember the reference, but it was.
No,
it was actually. It was very. In retrospect, it was very obviously Jonah. It was a very Jonah-esque verse, and here I was just blanking out on it. But here we go. We're talking about strategic planning within the church, and I had only become familiar with strategic planning in a business sense for an organization I work for, Citizens Memorial Hospital. I always heard it throughout the years. I was involved in upper management at CMH. I was the assistant director of nutrition services there. So planning, creating goals, 5-year plans, SWOT analysis was just a part of what I did. And then, I had no thought of even trying to bring it over to the church, and I think that is really to our detriment in some ways. So, Neal, just for everybody, what is strategic planning? And we'll kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts, and we'll just let you take over, brother, okay?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of different ways to explain that. And you mentioned there's different strategies to strategic planning. When I was in Virginia, the minister who was there with me did 1, 3, and 5-year goal setting, and we had congregational meetings where we would clarify and refine the short-term goals, and the long-term goals were just pie in the sky, but it was very effective for pushing leadership to set goals and objectives, and we got a lot of things accomplished through that. When I think about what strategic planning is, it is a means to get from where we are now to where we want to go. You think about our preaching and whatever communication comes from the leadership, we tell the congregation about expectations and what God's will is for us. And so we sometimes make folks feel guilty. You need to be involved. You need to be doing more. We need to grow. We need to be evangelistic, whatever, all those very nebulous, though very important biblical principles. But we never talk about how to build the infrastructure to get from here to there. And so strategic planning is an organized, methodical way to tailor your strengths and your opportunities to the place where you are and the resources that you have. It's a way to kind of put rails on the congregational activities. I mean, it encompasses a lot of how to specifically accomplish what God wants you to do.
Yeah.
That's not a textbook definition. That's kind of my, looking at it as we use it in the church.
Well, I just think it's of the utmost importance. You mentioned you said the nebulous, the general pleas to go out and do that, you can't really measure, and you just kind of hope that they're being done. Well, I said it from the pulpit, or we mentioned it in a meeting, and, it's hard to measure things. And I think it's important to kind of, measure things because it lets you know whether or not you're progressing or not. Nate, you chime in anytime you have a thought. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking you've got a bunch of people who you got a bunch of people who just don't know what to do. And there's people who have grown up in the church and kind of know the inner workings of it as far as like how to be involved in things, and they just kind of know the pulse of the congregation and they just fill in the gaps.
Right.
Sometimes, a lot of times it's kind of that 80-20 rule. 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. What I've found is the other 80%, a lot of the other 80% are wanting and willing to get involved. They just don't know how.
Right.
And because the gap's already filled in, it's not announced. It's not. So what you're saying, I think, could help bridge that gap is intentional planning and intentional goals instead of the nebulous, the way that you phrased it, the nebulous things to do. Right. Here are some short-term intentional things that you can do. I think that would help bridge a really big gap at a lot of places.
Well, and the goal is just what Nate said, is to get, and I agree completely. There are probably pew sitters who are comfortable coming in and consuming and just want to exist. But I think there are a whole lot more who are they're itching to go and they don't know where to go. And if we can give them some way to invest, then their commitment's going to grow. Their fulfillment of what God's mission is for us is going to be tapped into in a better way. But it's on us as leadership. And I would say in that, whether we're talking about elders, preachers, deacons, and we'll talk about something that we've done alongside the deacons that kind of help give people the opportunity to serve who are looking.
Yeah. So Neal, talk to us about kind of how we get these conversations started. Maybe you're a minister listening to this, or a single elder listening to this episode, and they're thinking, just from the beginnings of this talk, this is something that I see us needing badly in our church. How should the minister or that elder navigate conversations in meeting to start purposing the work of their church? And along with that, what are some of these early steps into getting strategic planning off the ground for our churches?
Okay, so as I answer that, let me give you just a small bit of history.
That's fine. Do that.
When I was at Bear Valley, when I was hired can't believe it, it's 20 years ago this July. The school was finishing a 50-year vision plan, which I'd never even heard of. I mean, the scope of that, 5 decades. But by the way, it's been very successful because in the extension program, their goal was to have 100 schools, and they had 1 at the time. So the fact that they have, 80 something now, shows that this vision planning works. But the same team or committee of guys got involved with giving the congregation the opportunity to be involved in the 50-year vision plan for the church. And you guys may have remembered when you were at school in the 4-year, there was that 1,000-word, had blue background vision statement, which was great. But we got to finding out pretty early on that that was kind of nebulous. It was pie in the sky, and that was great. But, what was the pipeline to get to there? So I was able for 4 or 5 years to be a part of a more streamlined, traditional strategic planning process that was led by guys that were deacons at the time, both became elders later, and that was Dean Murphy and Mike Ripperton. They facilitated. I was a participant. And I sat in there, and out of that, ultimately, we came up with 3 planks for involvement, and that was praise, participate, and proclaim. So it was improving involvement in worship and evangelism. And through all of that, we did some of what you talked about. There are different ways to do it, but my favorite is a SWOT analysis. And so I got to sit and listen. So I would tell a guy who's maybe wanting to be involved in this that he needs to, whatever that is, if it's read some books. Bob Turner's book, Lead, is a great book that outlines a lot of this. Read books about SMART goals, different ways to approach this. When I moved to Kentucky and we began the strategic planning I'll talk about in just a moment, I talked to Dean, and Dean said, it's a little bit risky for a preacher to facilitate, but I really we didn't have anybody with that experience at the time, and so I did wind up doing that. But I would suggest to a man that he kind of tap into, find out who in the congregation has some strategic planning skill set in his background, because it would be better for the preacher not to be both driving it and be involved in those goals. But I don't think it's a deal killer. So find out who your facilitator is, and if it has to be you, then we can get into some of the nuts and bolts of how that looks and what you do. When we did it here at a time in which COVID was going on, do you remember how we were all contracted and we couldn't meet? So there was about a 5 or 6 week period in Kentucky where the governor said we couldn't meet. And during that time, the elders said, well, this is a perfect time. A lot of their jobs had slowed down. And so we met together, all socially distanced, and we had our lawn chairs out at one of the elders' house, and we began talking about who we wanted to be and what we wanted to do. And out of that, we met once a week throughout most of 2020, where the first thing we did was we on a white or those little rip off post-it pages.
Yeah.
We began writing about, tell us who we are now. Describe, as we were then, the Lehman Avenue Church of Christ right now. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that in strategic planning is if people are wanting to go in a Pollyanna kind of all positive way, prompt them, lead them to say, well, okay, well, what are some of the things we need to work on? Just as often you have maybe those personalities that want to talk about, oh, this is all the things we're insufficient and inadequate or we're doing wrong. Yeah. Then you try to push them in a positive direction. But you take the time to try to exhaust that. And then you come back to it in another week and try to add to that and try to get a clear picture of who you see yourself as now. What we call that was building the bridge from now to then. What do we want to be? So in our second phase, what we did was we drew up what are our goals, plans. Just if money was no object, if people were no object, what would we want to do? And so we listed all of that out, and that gave us kind of a picture of how we saw ourselves and where we wanted to go.
What kind of goals are you talking about there? Like, give me an example of what that one or two of those goals.
Okay, so well, maybe I can do that better by talking about. So we have a college here, so it's going to dovetail. So I'll just go ahead and give you some of those. We have a lot of members of the church who come from the region who are students at Western Kentucky University, third largest university in Kentucky after UK and Louisville. So big college. And how are we going to minister to them? If they're coming here, a lot of those students stay in the Bowling Green area. How can we position ourselves to make them feel a part of the congregation, put them to work, integrate them so that when they graduate and they stay in Bowling Green, that we have more in our workforce? We also have an international center here. Refugees come from all over the world. So we have folks from, it makes us a very culturally diverse place for a city of less than 100,000. It's really, I don't know of another one like it. And so that presented a lot of opportunities that aren't present in other places. So here are things that are already here, that are already at play, and we're not doing anything to tap into them. but it's obviously a way that we can grow. We can grow our workers, those who are already in the body of Christ, but also be evangelistic on campus, and definitely be evangelistic. It's like being on a mission field, walking out your front door. And so these were goals that they had. In fact, when I met with the eldership here, when I was interviewing, the first thing that an elder said to me, we were sitting at a Cracker Barrel in Nashville, and he said, "Are you ready for a challenge?" They said, "We're looking for a tip of a sword. We want to turn Warren County, which is the county, upside down." And that's exciting if there's that kind of desire there. But the question is, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Because you can frustrate yourself very easily if you don't have parameters, if you don't have some kind of pipeline to get you in that direction.
So did they I mean, I don't know how you, if you want to get into this, but did they pursue you as the personality that could do this, or or was it mutual? And is this something that they just wanted to plug somebody in? I mean, it sounded like it's a good eldership that has this foresight to do these kind of things. That's a very special eldership to work with, one that is in leading the Lord's church with intention, especially within the respective counties and areas. But did you feel like that? Did they know of any background that you had in some of these things, or was it just kind of providence by you trying to get out there with family, or how did that go down?
Well, that certainly speaks to our side of it, what you just said at the end there.
Right.
They had a list, and I was, anyway, they were looking.
You're okay.
And they reached out to me, and we came and we talked, and what excited me was I love the nature of the work at Bear Valley, but it's a different work. It centers, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and it's changing the world. But it's centered around a lot the school, which I loved every minute of.
Right.
But it changes the face and the nature of the local work. It doesn't become your traditional local work, and the dynamics were different. And out west, the dynamics were different in a large city like that. The work I was at in Virginia was much more traditionally evangelistic, and this excited me that these guys. Most of those elders, blue collar workers, really weren't in growth industries where they had to do what you're talking about, strategic planning in your job. That wasn't how it was rinse and repeat and go and continue to do the things that they're doing, which they knew how to do well. They had some good instincts, but they didn't have experience in that. Strategic planning wasn't something we talked about until the pandemic. To me, I see a lot of God's providence in how all that played out. So I don't think that was as much a part of it as when we found ourselves. Do you remember how it was for churches and how everybody was just struggling to keep their head above water?
Yeah.
To their credit, these elders said, we're surrounded. The conditions are ideal. Let's attack, So we went into it that way, and we began to build the plan from there.
Okay. Well, I don't know where you want to go from where we're at in the discussion. Do we talk about goal setting, or do we talk about objective measurements? How do you want to progress this conversation, Neal? What's the most logical step after this?
Well, let me do this. The next plank on that bridge.
Okay, great.
After we built from here we are now, here's where we want to be.
Awesome.
So now the question is obviously, how do we get there? And we use SWOT analysis. And this maybe will speak to some of what Nate was asking about. We listed out all of our strengths that we have a lot of young people, that we have stability. We have a reputation for doctrinal strength in the area. So we just started listing out those things. And then we talked about our weaknesses. Where did we lack? We felt like we didn't know the Bible as well as that we wanted to. We were good givers, but we weren't necessarily personally involved. So you just think about the things that you could list out as strengths and weaknesses, SWOT analysis, the O, opportunities. That's where we got into a lot of where the vision planning was going to come in. We have the university, we have the International Center, we have location, We have property that we had bought, so we just began listing those out. What are the threats to that? Things that would probably be true wherever we all are: cultural threats, unpopularity of Christianity in some circles, the loss of young people on some percentage. So anyway, we drew all of that out, and we said, okay, given these strengths, what do we want to focus on? And we began to drill down on that, and out of that, and by necessity, I can't go through, but we're talking about hours and hours and hours. At some point, what we did was we said, now we need to bring the deacons in, and we have some other ministry leaders, and we need to start communicating to them that this is what we're identifying. We need you to help us to refine what are the 5 or 6 things that we want to do. In the middle of this process, one of our elders said he was a detail guy, worked for the water board, and he was a chemist, and so he wrote out the 167 things that this church did, and a lot of them were just like little planets out, not orbiting around anything. They're just little ministries. People's, they're champions, they're babies, and it didn't really fit to a bigger whole. It was just, and we've done it. We've always done this. Well, does it work? No, but we've always done this, So we had a lot of that going on. So to streamline that, to say we only have so much time, talent, and treasure. How can we maximize that? How can we utilize that with some synthesis, some synergy, all moving in the same direction? And so the deacons and the ministry leaders, the elders and the preachers, all began to work together to say, all right, here was ours. And it would differ from different people. Education, our Bible school program. We have got to make that an emphasis of the congregation. And we've got to set goals and objectives out of that. The WKU, the college ministry, you got to do that. Ministry tech, how can we utilize technology better in the 21st century and to reach younger people? Church family. There's always church family needs that exist. For us, relocation, because we knew we were landlocked where we were maxing out. Even out of the pandemic, parking lot and classroom space was exhausted before even we got to that capacity where people won't come in the auditorium. And so we drew out areas, evangelism, of course, local outreach, we called it, was another. And so those were areas of emphasis. But then we began to say, we need a vision. What is our vision that will help us to get from now to then, to build that bridge? And our vision statement, and again, this took some time, and we formulated that at the time, the Lehman Avenue Church of Christ seeks to be a growing, authentic family, trying to empower our community to obey God and go to heaven. Yeah. So that was our vision. So everything that we did in those vision groups needed to be pointed in that direction. If it didn't, we needed to kill it or shelve it or reduce it or do something with it to make it not central. And then, of course, our mission was very clear. We followed the Great Commission as our mission. Everything, whatever we do, we can do benevolence because we're to be benevolent. But let's not miss an opportunity to be evangelistic in that, whatever we're doing. So these deacons became, and these other ministry folks, we had a couple of guys that weren't qualified to be deacons, but they headed ministries in the church. And so they became vision group leaders. And they existed not to take the place of deacons, but to help to get members involved in those areas. So out of that, of course, they had to come up with strategies and goals and objectives. A lot of that's dynamic. A lot of that's deliberate. A lot of it just kind of happened. So we had a tornado in December of 21. That certainly was not in the strategic plan. But it allowed us to minister and serve to our community. We baptized 7 or 8 people. Wow. We were no longer invisible in the community. We were the last. There are 2 huge community churches in town, and they rolled up the sidewalk a couple of weeks before we stopped serving the community and meeting those relief needs. And we still, and what's that been, almost 5 years? we still reap the benefits of that service. And we counted 180 of our members who were actively involved in doing something in that disaster relief that we did for the month, about a month, a little over a month.
And Neal, was those efforts purposed through this strategic planning process? Like, you have this idea of when a disaster hits, this is our plan to get there. Or was this just kind of?
No, this is the dynamic.
Okay.
Not the deliberate. This was we were building the pipeline. And so we had the right people with their hands on the pipe, but they had not had this in mind. Now we have developed some strategies after the fact, but we didn't have that coming into this.
Gotcha.
And so that's how, to me, you guys know this is how God works. If you will roll up your sleeves and you'll plan and you'll try to do what you can to fulfill his will, there are things that you have in mind that he opens doors. But isn't it incredible how he opens up doors that you didn't even know were there?
Right. Yeah.
And he begins to use that as you desire to serve him, and then things are created and are done that fit with the plan or improve the plan, and then you're doing what you've tried to set out to do, but in ways that are maybe a little different than you set out to do.
So you spoke a little bit towards like little ministries that have been going on forever that maybe aren't really effective, but they're just kind of happening because they've always happened. In order to pipe everything, and correct me if I'm understanding this wrong, but you're wanting to, whenever you say the pipeline, it's everything leads to one goal, right? And it's that
The
mission
vision.
statement.
Mhm.
Okay. All the ministries, everything that's done is piped down to one goal. There's some other things that got to go. Like this something has to give. This ministry has to give. Did you find it? And I think I think churches all over the country, there's those little side ministries that okay, so speak toward, is it, I know it's difficult, and maybe it's not, maybe no one's attached to it, but there's difficulties there's hard conversations, and
That's right.
this doesn't fit the congregation's mission. How do you go about that? And maybe that's an elder, but how do you go about that?
And they did. And I will say that if you need as a minister to empower and encourage your elders to have those conversations, then that's the role you play. And really, if shepherds need to make sure that they're in a position and have already built the relationships where they can do this, you're not going to be able to go from 0 to 100 if you've not been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. It's going to be extremely hard. And sometimes it's the personality of the congregation. Every church has strengths and weaknesses. What surprised me, so we moved from a place we'd been for 70 years to a new location. We've been Lehman Avenue Church of Christ since 1955. We're now the Cumberland Trace Church of Christ. And there've been a lot of places where there was talk of moving somewhere else, and you would think, man, we might split the church because we're going to change the name, even though we're not on Lehman Avenue anymore.
Right.
We're on Cumberland Trace. It makes no sense,
Yeah.
Nothing. We had no problem. We have charter members still here, and we had no kickback. So as to your question, Nate, one of the biggest ones was life groups, and the life group care groups, I guess they call it, because that was in name only. Still here, it was struggling. You had your champions and you had your faithful devotees, but you could see it dying on the vine. And yet it was a sacred cow. But when you do a complete overhaul, it becomes, and you give it its credit and its due, and you acknowledge how valuable it's been in the life of the church. But we're going to try to accomplish the same things through some different means. And of course, we would like you to be a part of that, because we know this is something that you care about. That was the kind of conversation that was had. So far as I know, it never even got a flicker. So communication is huge, and communicating in a way that tells people you appreciate them and that you're not in any way disparaging their efforts or blaming them, but that you want them to be a part of what's next, right? So That's kind of how we handled things like that. And some
It
things,
sounds like kind of something you're getting at is the things that we think are going to be sacred cows and big deals. People are, a lot of times we're overthinking, and people are on board with there's a vision and the elders and the
hmm
ministry staff is on something, and we're happy. Sometimes we
yeah.
overthink the effects of things that really never pan out.
Well, and you're right, because there is some excitement that goes along with this, and people are like, yeah, this is new. Um, but I think you should always be wary of just what you said, because I mean, it would be unrealistic to say that there aren't going to be circumstances and places and times where you don't have people digging in their heels and are like, no way, you can't take this away. And even if it becomes this is a matter of the faith, and when it's not, it's just a strategy, it's a means. But we didn't encounter any significant blowback. It could have been the product of the times that we were in a world-changing event, and people were like, "What do we do?" And then the elders came out with a very specific plan that seemed to scratch a lot of the itches that we had.
Neal, before we move on to your next logical step in this process, my question is, how much would you all include the voice of the congregation, or do you feel like that it's important that maybe, this is a leadership thing? This is I guess really that's my question. To what extent do you allow the congregation to participate, and entertaining even, like the ladies' voices or whatnot? What does that look like? Or do you feel like it's important to kind of batten down the hatches as a leadership and say, listen, this is what we need to do moving forward?
Well, the short answer to your question is fully involve the congregation. The question becomes when. Um, we had we met once a week on Tuesday night for a couple of hours, and one of our deacons, who ironically is one of our elders now, co-facilitated with me, because I did listen to Dean and Mike and say, I don't really need to take all this on myself. It might in some way be construed as self-serving, which it wasn't, and so that helped. So we spent from April to October, pretty much every week doing that. Then we began to have our first meetings with that larger group, so the deacons plus two or three more, with the elders and preachers. And we began to start fleshing that out and identifying those vision groups. This wasn't done with congregational input, because these are the appointed leaders, leaders in service, and then the shepherds or overseers. And so it was all fleshed out there. And so on January 2nd, I think it was, in 2021, when the budget was presented, or maybe it was 4th, whatever it was, this congregational plan, this vision plan, was also detailed and outlined by one of the elders, in which then input was solicited. Things weren't codified or nailed down, and so we said, here's the areas, give us ideas, give us suggestions, tell us where you'd like to be involved, what interests that you have. Somewhere along the way, instead of a summer series in 2021, so we're talking about a year after this has started. The vision groups were going to take a Wednesday night every week, in the midst of that summer series, to detail what their vision group encompassed, what its mission, its goal, and its objectives were, and how people could tangibly get involved in that. So at that point, you're getting the congregation involved, and of course, there's always a loop for feedback.
What's the way that y'all went about it? A vision group is what?
Okay, so let me just give you one for an example. Church family. So we had 3 guys who were on the church family vision group, and so that takes in retreats. We have 3 different retreats during the year. It takes in benevolence. It takes in fellowship, edification. So obviously that's much more than 3 men or 3 couples can do, and so they solicited various volunteers for each of those different areas, and provided But something I was going to bring in, and I may have to walk out and get it for you. That's kind of a finished product, but I'm going to show you kind of how that works. We put out a magazine every year. So we started doing that at the end of 21. And so we put out a magazine each and every year in which we go through, here's the vision groups, here are ways to be involved. We have a church calendar. And so each of those vision groups worked the same. We had a church relocation vision group. There was finance piece, there was an architectural piece, and various people who had those talents and abilities expressed their interest in being involved, and they were put to work in various ways. Some of that was in the planning, the building phase, then the completion phase, the transition phase. And so those were means or ways for folks to be involved. Now, that was a very special vision group because we don't need it anymore. And so it's dropped off, but we've added some others since then.
Okay. You can step out anytime. I can edit this, and if you want to grab that, you can. It's no big deal.
All right.
We can pause here, and you can go grab that if you want, if you think it's poignant and important for the conversation, or...
Yeah, I think it would, because people like something that they can put their hands on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So something I'll show you, so I'll be right back.
No, that's fine. Yeah, this is such an important topic. And Highland does this to a degree. I think they could probably purpose it more, but definitely it's probably not even thought about in smaller congregations to a degree.
And it works there too.
Yeah,
it really does.
I know.
All of this works because we did a very infantile form of this in Virginia, and we grew from about 100 to 170, 180. Yeah. A different form, but yeah.
Yeah, and because just by nature of what this is it works. It's you start with who you are, where you're at, your culture, and everything. That's right. And then you kind of just you grow from there. So Neal, you stepped out for a minute and you grabbed a resource, and I'm going to put that large on the screen if you want to go ahead and share what you were talking about, that magazine.
Okay. Yeah. So this is our magazine we put out every year, and it's. I maybe can find a file that I can send it to you, but we have a Meet the Elders, a biography. It personalizes. We give this to new members, folks that we baptize, folks that place membership, but we also make it available to every family, put it in their box. And then, meet the staff, preachers and secretaries. But then we have our deacons, because these are guys driving the work and what they do, what the areas are.
Yeah.
And then we have our vision groups. And so a lot of it's
so cool. That's awesome. I love that.
Pictures in there because it kind of helps, put a face on what's being done throughout the year. So each one, see, I'll just hold up there for just a second. You have who the champions are, and a lot of this changes. Like the second group, it's changed from where it is now, but that's okay. It's just kind of give folks an idea of what is each one of these vision groups all about. And I told you we dropped the location, but we've added some others since then. So it just gives people a picture and of some of the ministries, and all the ministries meet. Like we have a special needs Bible class, the only one in Bowling Green. It's Sunday morning, Wednesday night. So it's for folks who are mentally or physically challenged. And it definitely meets the vision statement and works in our local outreach.
That is so cool.
And then equip. So maybe I don't know where a good place is to talk about this. I want to give people some hope and excitement about the fact that when you plan, God opens doors. When you say we're willing to commit to, and we have an elder that says this, if you, and of course it's not original with him, but if you only accomplish what you can do and you don't factor God in, then your plans are way too small. And so what I love about these guys is they've always said, somebody we've all known that says, what God controls grows. I think it was Cy Stafford I heard that said that. That when you set about to create a vision, a strategic plan, and you're deliberately trying to put all your resources at play, we shouldn't be amazed when God starts doing not only what we imagined, but more than we even thought about or imagined. So if I can just fast forward, we did all that strategic planning. We rolled it out with the congregation. Events start happening like the tornado, but a lot of what we've been able to do, we can attribute to the planning that took place and God blessing it. We wanted to make a statement. If we're trying to reach all of Bowling Green and turn it upside down, then we have a very diverse demographic here. So what we did was we already had a young man as a Freed-Hardeman grad who was a South Korean. He was born in South Korea, but was raised in the States. And he was our college and young adult minister. One of the fruits of the strategic plan was that we went after, I don't know how to say it, I guess I should. we went after Hiram Kemp. And of course, one of the last things that you'll think about Hiram is that he's black. But it's a plus. I mean, and you don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets up and he preaches, and the way we pitched that to him was, this is not an associate. We are our fellow ministers, co-equal in every way. What I've learned in that is, I mean, he's far my superior in most ways. But you're saying every time somebody gets up, if you're Asian, if you're black, if you're white, we want you here. And of course that spreads to everybody else.
Yeah.
But that's a fruit of the vision plan. And also to further evangelize, and Hiram is the best soul winner I've ever known. Anywhere in any way, he's a bulldog. I mean, it's amazing. And he's a lawyer, so you put all that together, and he knows the Bible. Have him on for Vertle and see if you can stump him at all. So anyway, so that's one thing that happened. The equipped workshop was, and we did something called that we had started in Colorado. Teens in the Word. We call it Into the Word. It's an adult version, and the equipped kind of became a Into the Word on steroids, and it's really grown. We've just had our fourth one. We started we relocated to Cumberland Trace, and the first estimate we got back in 2020 was like $14 million. There's no way. We can't keep doing everything else that we're doing with a price tag like that. But God in His providence sent us a man who was one of the best architects in the region. He's retired, but he's still doing this for churches. He takes the same footprint, the same architectural renderings, and on the same footprint, he designed something for exactly half, for $7 million. And between the sale of our building and the generosity of our members, we've been able to go forward as if, nothing has changed. We've not missed a beat. We certainly haven't had to cut anything. And all of that, I think we can point to and say that there is a connection to this vision planning that we've been doing.
Absolutely.
So all of our significant ministries and achievements is, of course, God's power and God's glory, but has been through having a plan and pursuing it.
So with the strategic planning, with a lot of these goals, they're in some degree, I don't know, maybe you follow this philosophy or not, but do you all have objective, measurable goals in place to where whenever you meet quarterly or whenever you meet, hey, this metric is being hit or not being hit, not to so much to discipline them, but in some ways it's nice to know where you're at on a scale. Do you agree with that philosophy, or
I do, and I would say that that's probably an area in which we need to grow. Sometimes, so here's the danger. You can become the victim of success, and when you've been driving toward goals, when you hit them, if you don't then set new goals, right, you can begin to coast. Yes. And that can be tough because, we're and another thing that came out of the strategic plan was we started the TV program. It airs on NBC and CBS, and a lot of these different things have led us to just being here at Cumberland Trace, we have, I don't know. I guess I don't know what the current numbers are, but anywhere from 20 to 30 visitors. I'm talking about, mom, dad, and children
Yeah.
coming in our doors every week. And I'm talking about most of those being from the community. We have a lot of folks who are church shopping, but you know how that the church shopper giveth, the church shopper taketh away.
Yeah, right.
So I don't worry about that. But anyway, as we're being given these opportunities, we baptized a lot of folks from the community, but of course that creates challenges, follow up, and
Right.
and the messiness that comes with all that. That I could tell you, I could quantify, and I do this. I do an annual report every year that we publish. We're growing. We're growing numerically. We're growing in number of baptisms. I can point to a lot of folks who are involved. But we still need to grow in and having a systematic interval of reporting on how are all the groups doing. The eye test, it looks great.
Yeah.
And we are continuing to grow, and more people are being involved. We started a young adults ministry that we're probably like you guys. We have a lot of young adults that make up our congregation. And I say young adults, I'm talking young marrieds with small children.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? The mid-20s to late 30s. But that's growing. Now, we could probably make that grow more. Our college ministry, it's growing. It's the best it's been since I've been here. But what could we do more? So
Right.
that's probably an area. That's probably what's next for us, is trying to get a better grasp on how to take where we are, measured against where we were, and then continue to grow. That's certainly in line with strategic planning.
Have you, with all of this, I'm sure and maybe not with Cumberland Trace, but I'm sure with some organizations, my goodness, listen to me, some churches, there are deacons and maybe even elders and church members who like this consumer mentality. Do you feel like these efforts have really just heightened and exposed who those people are? And do you do anything by way of, I'm not going to say discipline, but do you encourage, do you sometimes remove deacons? What would be your suggestion if, when rolling this out, you're met with some of this apathetic consumer mentality? What would you say would be the course of action for people that just aren't on board, be it elders, deacons, or members alike?
Well, I can say that that consumer mentality didn't seem to exist in our deacons, so we didn't have to cross that bridge.
Good.
But something that we mentioned earlier, I think, is always one of the hardest things to do in leadership is to have hard conversations. We don't want to do it. We're afraid of offending people. Maybe we don't know how to do it nicely, or we're afraid of what we might do. But if you hope to succeed, there's no way around it of having those difficult conversations. We have removed some deacons, but they were under different circumstances and not because of an apathy. A capacity you've got to have if you're going to be resilient in strategic planning is the ability to focus on the positive. Something that we started in the Bear Valley strategic planning that we try to do here is to start every meeting with the successes. Just give a few examples, some low-hanging fruit of here's what's happened as we continue this process. And that's always happening. It depends on what we focus on. And so we could spend our energy lamenting that portion of people that are just, or we could just say every church is going to have consumers.
Yeah.
Let them consume. And here's what we're hoping for. What if we can move 2 or 3 from the consumer bucket into the producer bucket in 2026? Would that be a victory? Yeah, absolutely. And you do that little by little, you change the culture. We talked about this in the Equip workshop. We're putting a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of advertising into that, and we're growing, but we're not, and we don't really know where we want God to take this, but what we said was, you're pushing a rock uphill, and at some point we're going to go from one year to the next where we double our attendance. People can go, wow, what did we do this year? Not really anything. You've been pushing the rock. And I think the same thing happens when you're trying to enact a strategic plan. A lot of pushing, a lot of effort, and you have very little results from that. And the trick is, don't be discouraged, don't give up, but keep pushing. And you're going to get to this place where, man, all of a sudden you've got this momentum going. But you put in all that sweat equity to get there. We did talk a little bit about consumer producer, especially early on, but we've had to do that less because people see the results, so they want to be, they get excited. Some, and then there's that other group of consumers that Christianity is always going to be about for them, coming in, sitting on a pew, giving $1, drinking some juice, and going home. That's it. But that's okay. It's not okay. We're not content, but it's a reality we've got to accept.
Yeah, and maybe oh, Nate, go ahead. We can't hear you, brother. And I don't know why. There you go. Well, no. I can't hear you, brother. No. It's okay. He's going to text me. Nate's been having some technical issues, but and no doubt it was going to be an amazing comment from Nate.
I'm sure.
But I think it's so important what you talked about, resuming our conversation with, how much mental energy do we expend on the kind of the negative aspect and the kind of in business, you would call it low performers. Not that we would ever view members like this, but I don't know how that equates one-to-one from business to church, because they're all members, they're all sheep. Some sheep are hurting, some sheep are, very well. But the cautionary tale to us managers was the sheep know when you're expending a lot of your mental energy towards the negative side of things, or the negative sheep or whatnot, the consumer mentality, and you're not. It kind of brings the whole organization and the church efforts down by focusing on that, and not so much focusing, like you said, on the positives, on those that are working. And oftentimes, whenever success is contagious, and some people just want to be a part of it. If they see now this effort that the church is doing, like you said, there are people that just don't know what to do, and all of a sudden, hey, this is something that I can derive purpose from and participate in God's mission. And I think all that is very well worth noting and reiterating. Neal, as we wrap up this episode, we're rounding off to an hour, and it's been an awesome conversation so far. Any final thoughts that you want to get pushed across, or final planks or whatnot to wrap up this conversation? Perhaps words of encouragement as we try to introduce strategic planning in our churches.
Well, let me just do that by building off of what you've just said. Tune in to the success stories. I think about a family. When we moved here, they were barely coming on Sunday morning. They had some spiritual struggles, and they were seriously considering quitting. And over the process of time, and a lot of different factors, I'm not going to say it's all this, but fast forward to today, and this is one of the most involved families in our congregation. And he even leads one of the vision groups, is one of our deacons now, and they collectively are just wide open, involved, and committed. And if I were to take the time, I could think of others like this. If nothing else happened, if we didn't move to this new location and didn't have the Kemps come and all the other humongous blessings, would it be enough if that one family was now involved? And again, there's a whole lot more. It will work. The investment principle, the stewardship principle, if you pour in, God will take those things. If they honor him and they're in harmony with his will, and he'll bless it and it will grow. And the thing is, it'll grow beyond and in ways that you never anticipated, because God's infinite in his wisdom and his ability. And he's just saying, let me use you, broken vessels so everybody can see that it's my power and my glory. And I think that's what we've seen here.
I love that. I think, I just think of my life, and I'm sure many of the listeners, when you actually give God a shot, a real shot. He shows up and he says, see, and not only see, but blows your mind. And he says, all I needed was just that little bit from you, and I'll show you exactly who I can be. And that is such an awesome story of the Bible. And, I wanted to loop in some biblical principles to strategic planning. We may just have a separate episode with seeing strategic planning being played out in the Bible, and maybe give you something to think about, Neal, as we look forward to adding some biblical content and concepts to strategic planning, because no doubt Jesus and Paul participated in some of these things, and even Old Testament, prophets. But I would love to do a conversation like that, and I know you're just itching to just burst at the seams to just give us some of those. But I want to do another separate episode about biblical principles and strategic planning, and putting some biblical content behind some of this. I think that would be an awesome episode. Neal, thank you so much for your time and your ministry. We had you out at the Bolivar Church of Christ, and they loved you. And I hear so many members, I say, how'd you enjoy Neal? And they say, oh, he was so great, and blah, 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 blah. I was just like, hey, whatever, that guy, I guess. But now they're listening to you. And I said, hey, if you're listening to him, you also need to listen to Hiram. And they're listening. They're listening to a lot of your lessons. So hopefully they're being encouraged there. Nate, I'm sorry we lost you, but we're going to...
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. There he is.
So what happened is, like 30 minutes ago, I bumped my cord, and my cord, it's so finicky. And it just, the whole thing went out when I bumped it. So, but whatever.
Well, next conversation, Neal, we'll get you on the calendar again. I know you're busy, but let's talk about it. Like us on all of our respective channels, and our outlets, YouTube and Facebook and all of that. I will link in the description all the ways you can access Neal's content, and also Kathy's. And I'll probably link Bob Turner's resource that Neal. I'm trying to think of all these things, but look for it there in the description. But Nate, anything before we close out?
I said like 3 comments, and no one was responding to them, and I was like, I don't think I'm in here. So I did have stuff to say, but it was a while ago. So.
Well, maybe we can pick that up next episode. We're pushing over an hour, and who knows if we've even made it that far with some of our viewers. So, Neal, thank you so much. I have some people in mind who I'm going to send this to immediately whenever I'm done, and I'm sure Nate does too. And Neal, you send it out too. Maybe this will help you, but it'll be on our Facebook before too long. Neal, thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, we enjoy it. Thank you, and we're going to just keep on keeping on. So. For Nate and Neal, everybody take care, and God bless.